a flat Earth trick.
So that was just an irrelevant point that you made then. So anyway, my point is...
No, the fact that I can speak for this particular experiment, I can do because I did it.
Okay, fair enough. And the fact that I can speak about these particular experiments is because I've researched them. And I'm saying it's of course fair enough. If you haven't researched them, that's fine. I will send them to you, right?
All right,
I'm asking if you would at least...
I will have a look at them in good faith, and we'll talk about it the next time if Parker has his back.
Okay, so just to recap, you're saying you're not really sure if you can explain the pendulum changing based on the periodicity of the sun and the moon and the eclipses, but you'll have to look at them. I'm saying this, I'm expecting you to keep your
actually
word
see the data and be able to evaluate the data. I'm not going to sit down and make an opinion one way or the other based on something.
Okay, but do you also acknowledge that even according to relativity, Einstein said you must acknowledge the validity and the Machian principle that there would be a translation of motion from the sky?
I don't talk to flat earthers about relativity.
Okay, but that's what your model claims.
No, I don't discuss relativity with flat earthers.
So you're saying that you can't defend your model with flat earthers?
I'm not going to discuss relativity with people that struggle with the basic concept of gravity and the laws of motion. No.
You just diverted to an add-on, right? So and I'm poisoning the well. It's all good. So anyway, the point is that, of course, if everyone uses their brain here logically, if the Earth is spinning, causing the pendulum and causing the ring laser gyro, then that means it's going to stay the same at latitude because you're at the same latitude line on a globe, right? So you have a certain angle to that globe, and that causes a certain deviation, right? But it shouldn't change as you get higher because you're still at that same angle to a globe, just to make sure in layman terms that everyone gets it. So, but what actually happens, and it's pretty cool, it's that when you go higher in the sky, actually
I will review the papers, and we'll discuss that when I've had a chance to review the papers.
That you detect the rotation more and more and more, which is impossible on the globe. And then also, just real fast, that same interferometry technology is what Michelson-Morley was. And that actually refuted the claim that the Earth orbits around the sun. It required the globe model to throw out Newtonian.
And that is a common argument in the flat Earth. It's a misconception of Michelson-Morley. They were not testing for the orbit of the Earth around the sun. That was a known. That was a given. They were testing for the effects of the orbit of the Earth around the sun on the ether, which I might add, the luminiferous ether is nothing more than a construct of a man's mind, just as Einstein's space-time was. It was designed to try and explain something, and when it was tested, it failed. Einstein passed.
Okay, so it wasn't trying to the effect of the orbit of the Earth on the ether. What it was doing was
attempting to detect the orbit of the Earth on the ether. It was attempting to detect the effect of the Earth's known orbit on the ether. And I have verified the fact that we are indeed in orbit.
What they were trying to do is see if there was a change in the velocity of light in the relation to the assumed orbit of the Earth through the assumed ether.
Now, no, that is a misconception.
Well, that's what Edward Morley said in his own words.
No, then you read the words wrong.
Because he literally said, we are doing a test with the objective.
Answer. Come on, Whitsitt, let me answer. They were testing the speed of light, assuming that it was being carried by the ether. And because the Earth is rotating, or is orbiting around the sun, that orbit should have had an effect on the ether and the speed of light in different directions. That's what they were testing for. They were not testing for orbit.
Dude, you literally just said the same thing I said.
The speed of light on orbit.
You literally just said exactly what I said, which was that they were trying to test for the change in the velocity of light in relation to the orbit through the ether. You said that's not what they did, and then repeated the same thing but less accurately. So anyway, I want to make a point, dude. It's very simple, right? That you can't just throw the ether out with MMX. That's not what happened. They didn't just say, oh, well, we disproved the ether and then kept it pushing. They had to also replace Newtonian mechanics. Okay, you had to change your entire model to keep the orbit of the Earth. You're aware of this, right?
No, we didn't have to change our entire model to keep the orbit of the Earth. What we did was we expanded on the model that we had and looked at it in a different way to account for the precession of Mercury. We had an error with Newtonian mechanics of 44 microseconds per century in the precession
Concerned
of
citizen think it
Mercury.
was description.
Of course, that's just not true. So the reason
What?
that Einstein,
What do you mean it's not
Einstein,
true?
that isn't the only reason that he came up with relativity was because of the perihelion shift of Mercury. That was, of course, observed 40 years before relativity. That's even
Correct.
long before. That's long before Michelson-Morley.
Yeah,
Michelson,
but that was what the end result of Einstein was, is that we had a better understanding.
Okay, that's not what you
of how
said. You said that's
gravity
why
works.
he made it.
No, it's not specifically why he made it. They spent 20 years after Michelson-Morley trying to figure out eddy currents in the ether and all sorts of other things. And then finally, Einstein came up with the correct interpretation some 30 years after the experiment was.
Okay, so what happened was they had to replace Newtonian mechanics with Einsteinian mechanics.
They did not
to explain-
replace Newtonian mechanics.
You
Newtonian
interrupt.
mechanics are within Einsteinian relativity.
They are patently different claims in terms
No,
of physics.
they are not.
Okay, one
They have
says
the exact same predictive results under the same circumstances.
Description.
no, they don't. One makes a different prediction for Mercury's perihelion shift. You just said that, which means they don't.
44 microseconds per century, yes.
Okay, so then they aren't exactly the
however,
same.
it doesn't
Okay, cool.
change satellites in orbit. It doesn't change artillery shells. It doesn't change Newtonian mechanics being used to design bridges. Anything that is not approaching the speed of light or is not extremely massive, such as Mercury being next to the massive sun,
I've already said this.
does
I've
not
already said your
require
script.
relativistic corrections.
I've
Now,
already
there are certain things that do, such as the timing signals from GPS satellites.
Okay,
Those require some relativistic corrections.
cool.
But putting that
Now, can I
satellite into orbit is Newtonian.